I was just saying, this will be, we're going to be doing, it might be, it might be live now. So hello, if you can see us. We are trying live streaming, we are live streaming to YouTube from Zoom. Not trying it, we're doing it. We're, I guess, in the classic Silicon Valley parlance, we're building the ship as it's flying. So anywho, I want to thank Lauren, maybe especially because you have to speak right after our fielding questions directly after this. So thank you for some of your time here this morning. I want to check in with I'm going to use my non-earbudded ear. Zoe, are we live? Are we good to go? I'll check the chat. Yeah, okay, all right, fantastic. Well, welcome all. Welcome to both DesignConf by Learners and the pre-show. Pre-show!
Hi, yeah.
Exactly, well, welcome. We are thrilled that you are both here and that you are joining Learners. I'm Ben. I work on the People Nerds imprint, part of Dscout. And so this is a great community, the Learners community, from the UX Collective folks. They work tirelessly to create free, accessible, broadly multi-languaged content that will help you either get started or move in the world of human-centeredness wherever you want. And this is our hype team. Again, I'm Ben. I'm going to let our speakers who are to my right introduce themselves, and we'll start with Anderson.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. It's really good to be here. It's a pleasure to speak with McLean, Lauren, and Ben. My name is Anderson. I'm head of design at Hotmart. We are a platform for creators, creator economy. And I'm from Brazil. I'm actually living in Amsterdam. Now it's 4 p.m. here, 4:30 p.m. And it's a pleasure to be here. We have a small team compared to Shopify. Have something like 50 designers in the UX chapter. And it's going to be an inspiring talk to share with you and learn a lot. Yeah, by learners. Yeah.
And thank you so much, Anderson, for being here. And be sure to check out Anderson's talk today, at least in the Friday, September 17th. I got to get my international cred going. But at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard, Anderson will be talking about scaling design leadership, both at Hotmart and other places that he's on. So please check that out. McLean, hello and welcome.
Hello, everyone. Ben, good to see you. And as always, Ben and folks at Dscout, thank you. I'm fortunate to attend many industry gatherings, and you all show up. I really mean that. And for Collective and other folks, we really appreciate and value the support you do for the UX community. So thank you very much. I'm McLean. I'm a director of UX design at Shopify. I've only been there 3.5 months. So focus group of 1, take whatever I have to say with the appropriate filter. I'll probably say something different in 2 weeks. But incredibly excited just to have a good conversation with y'all this morning.
And thank you again. McLean is not speaking today, but he will, I'm sure, in the future. He's growing and learning a lot. And if you're in the Twin Cities, he's got your poutine recommendation for you.
There it is.
So there it is. And
Thanks,
finally, we're very excited to also welcome Lauren. Lauren is speaking directly after this panel. So you'll have to jump over to the DesignConf stream. She also, I'm going to ask my executive producer, Zoe, to drop the link in the chat, or I guess, yeah, the chat here. Lauren just published a piece on the People Nerds blog about advocacy in user research in partnership with Humanity Centered. Please read it if you have time over the weekend to do so. It's People Nerds often features and highlights, rightfully so, the tactical and the strategic about the day-to-day doing of our work. And I think this article falls into that, but it might not be something that very many of us are thinking about, and I think it's high time we did. So Lauren, with that way too long introduction, welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ben. It's so great to be here with you all today. Hi, McLean. Hi, Anderson. I'm Lauren Salenza. I am an independent designer and writer. I used to be a design lead for Google Maps for a few years. I was an initial member of the Alphabet Workers Union, grew up in rural Ohio, and yeah, I'm just so thrilled to be here today to talk about the industry as it is today and where it's going. And I'm based in Seattle, the unceded homeland of the Duwamish people. And yeah, just really thrilled to be here today. And also shout out to Keith Herring, who is an incredible artist, and wanted to just kind of advertise him again and his legacy on my t-shirt today.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm glad you did. And are you in Seattle presently? So is it is it very bright and early where you are?
It is, but you know what? I've got tea. We're good.
Okay, good.
It's all good. Yes.
Good. So we've got Anderson in Amsterdam, you in Seattle, McLean and I sort of holding down the central part of the Midwest. We, as a good Ohioan and Michigander, and now Minnesotan, we are good to go. Well, I'm hoping we might start with, Lauren, something that you just hinted at there, and that's sort of design is not unlike UX, but user research is very often still trying to get a seat at many organizational tables and analogically. Design, I think most businesses, regardless of their maturity, would say, right, we should probably have that. What does, however, that maturity, what responsibilities come with that? You know, your article suggests that a few of them. I'm wondering if each of the panelists might maybe make a prediction for something that design across both frontline all the way to folks leading and scaling teams, something we really ought to be thinking about as a design community. Again, and I know I'm using designer with a very broad brush here, but Lauren, I wonder if you might kick us off, something that's been on your mind, or maybe something you and Humanities Center have been thinking about vis-a-vis design and the world at large.
Yeah, I love that you brought the point of research, because I think that in the future, research is going to become more and more and more prevalent. And I hope that that is the case, because I think we're now heading into a time where more and more people are kind of losing trust in technology, rightfully so. You know, there's a lot of products out there that may not have really a really great vision, or they may cause fear for people, or they may trigger, you know, kind of emotional mental health that's just like frustrating to use or just tired to use, especially when we're living in a remote world where we're on tech and screens all the time, right? And so we need research to sort of feel like we're really connecting back to the people that we serve, and that we understand both the opportunities that we have as tech makers, but also where we might be causing harm without realizing it. And so I hope that research can have more of a seat of a table, that design and research really are like braided together, and that can be more of an embedded team moving forward.
McLean, Anderson, from your perspectives, I think, yeah, and Lauren, I'm really glad that you brought up the integration between design and research. Very often those folks are embedded on teams, or that is the research team. It includes a design component. McLean, but before we kicked off, you said there are close to 500 designers at Shopify helping businesses, entrepreneurs, folks try to get a hold of commerce broadly defined. Your perspective, things that you're seeing in the world, either, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'd say one, you know, there's a lot of good thought leadership around design leadership, which is important. I think that's a role that's been very natural for many design leaders to embrace, especially kind of that visionary or North Stars, or kind of push it out a little bit. I would say candidly, as someone who is helping lead a 500-person design organization, multidisciplinary across the world, at times design management gets a little bit of a bad knock. You know, I think we think of it as meetings or administrative kind of overhead, and I really see it as a craft. I profoundly do. I would say for our learners out here today, there's a massive curriculum gap. Like, we go to design school and we learn color theory or typography. Management is a learnable and teachable set of skills within itself. And I think for most of us, as we move from ICs to managers, as directors, a real kind of opportunity for learners is to get some upskilling there. And so that's just kind of one area where I point folks, is just whether it's a light certification, a mini MBA, reverse shadowing, really encouraging folks to kind of work on their management craft. And I think they'd be surprised about how that will also help grow their design craft as well.
Anderson, and from your perspective, your team is global like McLean's. You yourself are, I would say, a citizen of the world. What are you seeing from bouncing around, interacting with designers who, again, come from different cultural milieus, have different maybe expectations of what design can do, looks like? How do things look from your corner of the world?
Yeah, what I think about it is really similar to McLean. Leadership is another role, completely different role, that you have to transform yourself and see yourself as a human before a designer. A human, when I say a human, capable of learning anything and any kind of skills, you know. And when we say that we are leading design, it's a little bit tricky because we are leading the noun designer, the area, or the user-centric perspective, you know. And sometimes I found myself leading how to really deliver value for people, remove pains, instead of the methodology of design, the design way of doing, one against other, you know, like we are not actually an area, we are more a philosophy than an area that we have to defend, you know. We are here for users, at least at Hotmart, we have a user-centric perspective, you can have other perspectives, but it's really tricky to negotiate for the user perspective and the company perspective. Not every time these matches together, sometimes it's opposite. Like to make more profitable, I have to break the rules on experience, and how can I measure this balance? Like delivering to make profitable instead of make profitable and then later come to fix everything, you know? And that's the kind of dilemma that I have in my daily life. Actually, I have many meetings, yeah, one-on-ones, mentoring, and all this stuff of an executive life, yeah. And it's really important to understand if you are learning as a designer and you want to be a leader of design, that you will change your profession, you know, like you completely. So I say to my team that is something like 4 years that I don't read a design book. Yeah, I'm just reading about psychology of hunting, hiring, you know, evaluating feedbacks and all this stuff. So I just changed all this perspective. And dealing with a global team is even more challenging because inside this user-centric perspective, you have the cultural challenges of your team. So to make this message clear throughout the organization with many interpretations, different interpretations because of the cultural aspect, you know, it's the challenge that I'm dealing right now.
And Lauren, I'm hoping you might step in and talk about how what Anderson and McLean are talking about, we need to get smarter about leadership, trickles into your important conversations about advocacy. Might you, I guess, spotlight your piece that you recently wrote, the rationale for writing it, and maybe something for those frontline designers, those ICs out there who might think like, well, I'm not there yet. How might I start making an impact, a change, however that's defined?
Yeah, I think advocacy starts with just small acts at a daily level. You know, I think sometimes when we think of advocacy, we think of this huge thing, you know, of like coming together, and that is definitely a part of it and can be successful. But if we break it down just at a daily level, I think there's lots of opportunities for ICs to advocate. You know, one way that I think of it as, in a lot of cases, you may hear, you know, in the language that's being talked about. I love, Anderson, your point about translating, you know, different things to different people. But I think there's also another moment to think about how we might reinvent some of the language we're using when we're talking about the customers or the people that we serve, right? And we've had a long discussion about, do we keep saying users? Do we not say users anymore, right? And I think that I found myself kind of in this scenario where there was a lot of talk about like market share and like the next billion users and all this. And I would try to, at a daily level as a designer, if I was showing designs or if I was like in a meeting with, you know, my team, I would say, you know, Lily Jean wants to do this, or I would try to like say their actual name if we had permission to do that, right? To try to make it feel more human, to be like, look, these are real people that are using our products. They're a part of real communities. They live in real cities. Like, you know, let's give it a name. Let's give it more of this specificity as opposed to just seeing it as market share. Because when we only talk in the words of market share, you know, while that can be important for translating certain things to certain disciplines, it does distance us, you know, from the real scenarios. So I think that's one way that, you know, people can think about it, is through language. Another way too, I think, is opportunities for bringing in more visuals, whether it is imagery or, you know, sometimes in meetings I would pull together like a 2-minute YouTube video of a particular city or, you know, a particular snippet from the news or something, just to kind of ground the conversation in reality of like, here's what's actually going on in this area or with this particular audience. And it would really help actually set the tone of the meeting so that when we were moving on and talking about decisions, we actually were thinking about that video or thinking about, that context. And so, anyway, I just want to offer those, quick examples of how you can advocate by thinking about how do we bring the real world into our workplaces.
I'm so glad you did. McLean, Anderson, responses, feedback, or thoughts on that? I know that for the folks that I speak with in the user research, and I understand it, and I'm happy that designers often occupy both of those spectrums. They've asked, like, well, if I do want to imbue the user or hear from the user, I need to do that research. Those UXRs are often saying, like, I'm the one carrying the empathy, and I'm trying to like shove it at my stakeholders who, Lauren, as you say, are reporting to someone else who might have conversion, lead volume, market share, other things on their mind. And so I can, and you mentioned this in your article, Lauren, I hear from, user-centered professionals about that sense of burnout, that like, I both want to advocate for my, the folks using the experience or are benefiting from this thing. And I'm feeling like I can't be the only one. McLean, in your both experience previous to Shopify and now, how are you thinking about managing the advocacy within your teams or helping designers sort of move up?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'd say one, just on kind of the research topic, look, we really have earned that seat at the table. I feel like we've really seen a paradigm shift from just like fighting for the value of a good experience on the internet, to now like building upon that foundation. I do think sometimes that seat at the table feels like a high chair, there's, I'd say for researchers, this is a pre-show, so this is a little kind of a hot take. I think we got to get a little closer to data science to be really kind of candid at times. The pace of iteration, development, how fast we're moving, how fast our competitors are moving, how fast the market is moving, sometimes does outpace historically generative research. And so sometimes there is kind of a structural misalignment there. I see we've got some product researchers doing hands down the most impactful work on our team. And I'm excited because it's both that advocacy, bringing historically what research brought to the table, but now fused with the touch of data science. And I feel like that's a real kind of potent combination, so that when we do get that seat at the table, we're still articulating ways that business owners need to hear things. So I'd say if folks learning today, like even if you're just like an entry-level data science, something like that, upskill there might be a spot to be looking at kind of going ahead in your career.
And we know that Anderson, very quickly, there is lots of data justice to be had vis-a-vis data. And so I think the more eyes we have, the more voices we have in those systems. Siloing has many problems. One of them is that there aren't as visible checks and balances, or even folks just saying, well, why are we doing it in these ways? Or how might we do things differently? So that's a great call, McLean, to both partner with the BI, sometimes business intelligence teams, they might be called. That is an interesting foray. Anderson, please.
Yeah, what I think about it is that there is a common language throughout the company that is numbers and money, even though you have many feedbacks or humanized information, it's really hard to transform this information to show up in a director meeting, for example. And actually, I really believe that researchers have to meet with data to humanize data. Looking for dashboards won't make you figure out what people are feeling. Dashboard just measures what we touch with a mouse or trackpad. We don't know what happens behind the scene, behind the screen. And after the meeting, we actually on this pandemic moment, much less. And to make this data appear in a table of director is really a tough job. It's hard to make it happen because they won't have time to do the interviews, the usability tests, and all this stuff. But at the same time, as we get these humanized data, we have to connect with their language. What's making them awake all night long? What are the executive worried about, and how can we connect these with the user pains? And that's the only way that we can make them feel this pain emotionally. And I really like Daniel Goleman's perspective about emotional intelligence. And there is a quote that he says is that we take data to justify emotional decisions, you know, and we have to keep in mind that executives are also humans. Yeah, they sleep, they go to the bathroom. Yeah, they do all this stuff. Yeah, they are humans at all. And then when you get this emotional trigger inside an executive, it's really usual to then to make the data appear. You know, like now that I'm convinced that the user is suffering, I have to take the data to make it change. You know, it's not the usual mindset, but when Daniel Goleman said this, I really believe. Yeah. So and I tried to make this emotional trigger more real. When I was working in an insurance company and startup, and one thing that I did to make it happen, like this emotional trigger, was to challenge the executives to taste their products. Like, oh, we're gonna rescue you inside a role when you call for the insurance. You know, so go with your car to this geolocation, and then when you get there, you call us to rescue you. And then he was waiting on a warm day for 2 hours. And these 2 hours isn't the same 2 hours in the dashboard, you know. The dashboard shown 2 hours, but 2 is 2. It's not 2 hours waiting on the sun, you know. So when this trigger happened, this director just began to look for data to make this important, you know. So it's something like emotional hacking inside this active board, you know.
I hope that if our audience gets nothing else, it's ask your executives. I mean, we are hearing more and more researchers saying, come along with my site visits when we were able to do those safely, or join me in the interview too, Lauren, as you're saying, hear Leela Jean speak about, well, I'm not sure how to make use of this, or I'm overwhelmed in these ways, or I have 5 jobs because I have guardianship over these folks. And yeah, it's that context that so many of us are advocating for. We've got about 6 minutes before Lauren's fantastic presentation. Are there other things that you all would want to leave this group of learners who, again, are approaching design either from the first time or for some of them scaling their leadership? Lauren, back to you. Things that have been kind of popping up in your mind as you've been prepping for this conference?
Yeah, burnout. It's real. And I think it's especially real in this industry. And when we're talking about these conversations of advocacy and connecting to leadership, you know, it can be very difficult, especially in a time while we're in a pandemic. And so I've been thinking a lot about, like, what do we do to take care of ourselves? What do we do to take care of our teams? You know, what can we do moving forward? It's interesting because I think when the pandemic was first starting, there was a lot of language around, like, is this the new normal? Like, are we going to go back to normal? And the longer and longer that we see this kind of playing out, it's almost like, I don't know if we'll ever really go back to the way that things were completely, right? And in some cases, there are things that I definitely miss about, you know, 2019, but there are things that I don't miss about it. And I think there's an opportunity here to really, like, set a new paradigm for how we think about our own health as we're doing this work, and just sort of checking in with ourselves to make sure that we can have the stamina to do this work, because it's hard, and it's hard, I think, when there's a lot going on in the world, right? Would be curious to hear your thoughts on that too, Anderson and McLean.
Happy to, a couple quick ones, just kind of leave behind our little suggestion box for our learners out there. One, skills-based volunteerism. You know, it's good for the soul, good for your craft. Find a good nonprofit you love, help them crack together their donation flow, fix a landing page, do an accessibility audit. It's a great way to upskill, and work is work sometimes, you know, and so a little use of your skills for the greater good outside of the office, I think, is nourishing. I would say commit to upskilling, you know, every quarter, find a micro skill and keep building part of your learning development. We want folks to broaden their T. And I'm kind of arguing with myself here, which is common, but, like, step away from the algorithm. Like, it's like with Figma's great, but it's almost too easy now. You know, we do have a lot of data. like take a creative writing class, like go paint something, especially in remote work now that's caused great efficiency, but has limited our ability to capture that shoulder to shoulder magic of capital D design. I think we need to bring more of ourselves and more of our creativity to work. So paint a picture, you know, throw some pottery around, do what you need to do, but some tactile creativity, I think, will actually help you think of solutions that you aren't seeing in kind of digital first world. But keep learning out there, learners. I guess that'd be the big point.
Totally agree. I know, Ben, do you want to speak something? Say something? Yeah. So what I think is that you as a leader, you have to, as anyone, as a human, you have to take care of your mind and of yourself first, you know. And when I say this, I'm thinking about time, about energy, about mood, you know. It's really hard to make yourself motivated all the time. And as a leader, you're gonna be asked to motivate others, you know. So motivation takes energy. Motivate others takes more energy, even, you know. So it's really important to have this conscient movement, like where I'm putting energy and how am I feeling at the end of the day, and is it health, or I have to reprioritize what I'm looking for, you know. To make this decision, you're gonna have to let things break, you know, like, oh, these I won't focus, and that's okay. And this choice is a hard choice. You're gonna have consequence, pressure, everyone asking you for something. But if you can communicate clear what you are focusing on, it's easier to make this energy control more clear in your mind, you know. And so you have to choose your battles. You won't win everything. No one in the world does everything they want, you know. You have to choose something. And another thing that as a leader that is really hard to deal with is about absorbing other emotions. So throughout the day, many people will gonna ask you to complain about something, or oh, everything is wrong. And then you as a leader have to have conscience about what is coming into you and what is just listening. Okay, I'm listening, I'm helping, but it's not coming inside myself. And this is the hardest challenge that I'm dealing right now. I have 50 designers with many energy coming from, and then I have to be good at the end, be well at the end of the day, okay? And it's really hard.
Certainly, yeah. I as someone who has asked each of the three of you to give more of your time, more of your energy, I graciously thank you for some of it. To our audience, thank you so much for joining. Seek out these people. They are all on LinkedIn, Twitter, and others, writing, thinking, promoting. That's right. Come on down. I can tell you, I work with a lot of folks as a people nerd. These are gracious, kind people. They have smart things to say. Go read Lauren's piece. It's on People Nerds. Seek out Humanity Centered. Lauren is speaking right now, so let's tune over, check her out, get your questions ready. Anderson, McLean, Lauren, thank you so very much for the time. Stay well, be well, and I hope we get to meet again soon.
Thank you. Tienes
Thank
un buen
you.
día.